So it's Monday and I've got the day off today. It's quite rare actually for me to have a day off just on a random weekday with no plans. It's quite exciting. Right, cup of coffee number 2. Nearly ready to go for the walk. It says, well, I'm going to do a walk today from the All Trails app. If you haven't heard of it, it's a really good app. And it basically gives you like the most amazing walks close to you. I've never done one on it before. And it says there's only 20% chance of rain. So fingers crossed I don't get wet. Ollie. So I've come up to the Clifton Downs on my day off, and the Clifton Downs is just this beautiful part of Bristol where there's loads of green space and it's absolutely massive. It's right at the top of a massive hill, so to walk here from street level is you have to walk up a massive hill basically. There was signs this morning that it was actually going to be quite a nice day. The sun was out and I've come up here and it's absolutely freezing. So I wanted to record a video today to talk about toxic and abusive relationships, and I wanted to make this video in order to help people who might be in a toxic relationship. They might be thinking, hang on a minute, I've just got with someone. Is this showing signs of there being a level of toxicity? So I was in a toxic relationship when I was 22, 23. At the time I was a police officer for the Metropolitan Police, and I've been in the police about 7 months. I've just finished my training at the Hendon Police School, which is where the Met does all of their kind of training for police officers. It's like police academy. And I've just been posted to team. So I was a response officer, taking 999 calls. That was what I did. And I first met Dean, my partner that I'm going to talk about, over the internet. And he lived in Crawley, I lived in London. And quite quickly, the relationship started we started to spend a hell of a lot of time together. And every day that I had a day off, I would pretty much spend it with him. And then he would come to mine in London. I would go to his in Crawley. Looking back now, was there signs early on, red flags, so to speak? Most definitely there was, but I did notice the way he was with his parents was, he was very fiery. But at the time, I was feeling very lonely. I'd just bought a flat in London, and I had not very much money because I'd joined the police. I'd managed to find that I could get a shared ownership property, and I literally stretched myself to buy the flat, so much so that I was proud to have my own place at, a young age, but I literally had no money at all by the time I'd paid my mortgage and everything. I was literally living off about £30-40 a week. So I was feeling really lonely and not really liking my own company. So I think that at the time I overlooked some of the red flags because well, I guess it's that old thing, isn't it? When you're, you need to love yourself and be complete before you can be in a relationship, because a lot of people try to find their happiness through someone else rather than being happy in their own company. But, that was something that I had to learn in my 20s. In my 20s, I didn't really like my own company. I would always try and seek out the company of others. So Dean and I got together, and very soon on in, probably about 16 weeks into the relationship, he decided that he didn't want to live at home anymore. So it wasn't an overnight thing, but he gradually started moving his stuff in. More and more of his belongings were starting to turn up, and before you know it, he had a drawer in the bedroom. And about 5 weeks into living together, I was finding it quite hard to live with him because I would say he was quite a jealous person, and he was quite controlling. And as the weeks went on, things really started to become not very nice. He would be very controlling of my time, had high expectations of what I must do in order to, make the relationship good or appease him. And if I fast forward about 4 months, things were really, really bad, to the point where there was occasions when I'd get in from a night shift, he'd absolutely boot off on one, and I'd barely get any sleep and then have to go back in for a night. And then I remember on a few occasions I'd get in my car to drive to the police station to do my shift, and he'd lie on the bonnet and say, "You're not going in, and if you do go in, I'm going to turn up to the police station and basically make a whole raft of false allegations against me." So I was absolutely petrified. At the time I said to my mum, "What do I do? How do I get out of this relationship? I'm actually scared of him." I was bloody scared of him and what he might do. So one evening he had an almighty breakdown, and at that point I decided I needed to get in touch with his parents and to get them to come and see him and effectively take him home. So his parents came. They came all the way down from Crawley to London, and when they arrived, he'd locked himself in the bathroom, refusing to come out. And for the whole time they were there, he wouldn't come out the bathroom, and eventually they had to leave. So, that was not obviously what I wanted. As the weeks went on, eventually, and it was so hard to get out of the relationship, I managed to finally summons and muster up the strength in order to break up with him. And when I first broke up with him, he was calling me all the time, and I was so stressed. So what I decided to do was to book to go. My mum was basically with her partner at the time going to go stay in Spain in her partner's villa, and she offered for me and my police officer friends to go out there just to sort of get away. And I thought that was what I needed. I needed to get away because I was so stressed about still thinking what he might do. I remember we was at Gatwick Airport and he was absolutely hounding me and calling me, so much so that my friend who I was going with said, "Jason, just turn off your phone." Anyway, then we got to Spain, and I remember from that moment onwards, I didn't hear from him. It just went completely silent. There was nothing, which actually was unsettling me more than when he was bombarding me. So there was no calls. And although in my mind I was thinking, well, maybe he's moved on, it was just making me feel really, really uneasy. The silence from him, I wouldn't say was making me relax anymore. It's blimmin' cold up here. It's so windy. Where is the sun Where is the sun now we're getting to May? But anyway, the story continues. So I got back to England a couple of weeks after getting back. I was back at work, and I was due to receive, when you're a police officer, the first 2 years of your service in the police, so your probation period, you have to do a lot of different things. You have to do a lot of work to pass your probation. You have to demonstrate a lot of different evidence that you've dealt with certain offences. You have to demonstrate that you've got experience in a lot of different things. So it's a massive tick box exercise and a hell of a lot of work. So I'd done all that, and it was my day to go and have my ceremony, my big ceremony where you meet the top police officer on the borough commander, and I was going to go get my certificate, meet him. So I polished my shoes. I was wearing my tunic, which is the ceremonial outfit you wear in the police it's like a ceremonial outfit. If you don't know what a tunic is, Google it. But it's very posh. You only wear it on, very prestigious occasions. So I was wearing that. I went over there with a police officer friend of mine. She was at about the same level of experience. So we were both due to go over together, meet the borough commander and do that. So she got led in first of all to meet him, and I was sitting in the canteen. And then it got to my turn, and I was sitting there, got led in, but I didn't actually get led in to meet the barrack commander. They took me to a side room, and a superintendent in the police told me, Jason, you're going to be suspended because your ex-partner has made allegations, criminal allegations against you. Well, that was it. I was off, crying, because I knew I was crying because part of me was almost like, well, look, at least I now know what he's done. But I was also crying because it just turned my whole world upside down. Must have been crying for at least a good 40 minutes before I could compose myself together to leave. So I had to hand over my warrant card, got told I was being suspended on full pay, and that was it. Went back home. And then I was like, well, now what? Anyway, this saga dragged over a very long period. A few weeks later, I was lying in bed. A friend of mine had stayed over who was worried about me because obviously I wasn't myself at all during that period. And one morning at 4 a.m, I get an almighty thud at my apartment door, and waiting there is 4 or 5 police officers, all dressed in plain clothes, and they arrest me and take me into the police station. And that was the start of what was 18 months of absolute hell, which eventually led to me having to literally try and fight for my freedom. Fight for my freedom because I had to have a 5-day Crown Court trial at Southwark Crown Court. So with this video, I wanted to talk about toxic relationships, because I think a lot of people, one of the big things that people do is they go against their own judgment, their own intuition and their own gut feeling. And that's a big thing that we do. A lot of the time, if we listen to our true essence and our gut feeling and our intuition, it doesn't normally serve us wrong at all, because you're listening to your inner voice. But a lot of the time, we will feel something, but then we will think and have thoughts and go against it and try and rationalise things in our mind. I think the first thing when you're entering into a relationship is you need to think to yourself, firstly, are you happy in your life? Because if you're trying to enter into a relationship because you maybe feel a sense of a void, you might feel that you need someone else to make you happy, that's not the right foundations for a relationship, full stop. You need to work on yourself and learn to love yourself, learn to love being in your own company, I believe, before you can even enter into a relationship. So, and that can be hard work. That can take a lot of work, because you really have to go through a process of, learning to love your own company. I think a lot of people don't like their own company, which is why a lot of us try and use alcohol and drugs and whatever it might be to have a sense of escapism from our own reality. And when you do enter into a relationship, I think you need to look, not look for the negatives, but be aware of red flags. And if there is a red flag or something doesn't seem quite right, then be aware of that. Because I think that, the amount of times I think people enter into relationships, they see some red flags at the very beginning, but then they carry on in the relationship, and then the red flags that they did see then rear their head a year, 2 years later, and they've wasted 2 years being in a relationship that's just not working. Or sometimes even further, people will have children, and then the things they saw at the start of the relationship can cause a big problem. If you are in a relationship where you are really struggling because your partner might be controlling, there might be a level of coercive control, then the first thing you need to do is you need to speak to someone. You need to speak to someone close to you. You need to let someone in. Some of the time there can be a sense of shame. You might be thinking, is it me? Is it my fault? People who coercively control and narcissist mentalities, people with a narcissist kind of personality profile, they're very good at, perhaps abusing or using a level of control, but then dressing that up as love, or I care about you, or, this is how much I love you, look what you make me do. And, sort of, they're very good at using that level of control. One of the biggest regrets I have was I wish I'd voiced and gone to the police sooner. But there's a whole nother story behind that in terms of why I didn't go to the police. But anyway, I just wanted to record this video to say to anybody who's perhaps been through or is in a relationship at the moment where they are struggling as a result of an abusive partner, speak to someone. Just that's so important. Make sure that you have support around you. And if you don't, there are charities out there that can help, that can specialise in this. I know all too well how difficult it can be to break out of a controlling relationship, because it was so difficult for me. And looking back now, yeah, I wish I'd got a bit of help sooner. But I hope this video does help.